Our focus today is on hurricanes because the season has begun and we need to know what's happening. So we will be looking at the projections. How active will the season be and why do we need to be prepared? The head of the weather branch at the Met Service will give us the one-on-one. You're watching Jamaica Magazine. I'm Adrian Atkinson. Stay with us.
Good day, I'm Stephen McHugh, and this is your JIS News for Thursday, June 1, 2023. Prime Minister Andrew Holness is assuring Jamaicans that there is no attempt from the government to remove cash from the system or to create a cashless mandate for citizens. The Prime Minister made the statement at a digital transformation forum of the Inter-American Development Bank, IDB, held at the AC Hotel yesterday. Acknowledging that there are concerns about digital currencies, Mr. Holness asserts that investments continue to be made both in the technology and the currencies themselves. He assures that citizens will be able to choose whether they participate in the ongoing digital transformation.
There is no attempt by the government to remove cash, meaning paper money, from the system. I want to take the opportunity to assure everyone that, one, neither the digital ID nor digital currency will be mandatory. There will be no compulsion to use them. The reason we are implementing these things is to make the lives of citizens easier. If you choose to use them, hooray to you. If you choose not to use them, it is your choice.
As it regards safety concerns, Prime Minister Holness points out that some of the threats that exist in digital currency also exist in cash. He says focus, therefore, must be placed on the strength of the country's laws to protect consumers and not in the fear of the technology. This, he says, is especially true for the NIDS program and the central bank's digital currency Jamdex, which was launched in 2022.
There will be strong safeguards to ensure that your personal data and information is properly secured and used for the purposes that the citizen has provided it for.
Government will be spending between $1 and $4 billion in each parish under its $40 billion road improvement project, SPARK. Prime Minister Andrew Holness announced plans for the Shared Prosperity through Accelerated Improvement to Our Road Network, SPARK program, during his budget debate presentation in March. Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, Everald Warmington, revealed the preliminary breakdown of expenditure during his contribution to the sectoral debate in Parliament on Wednesday. The largest allocations of more than $4 billion each will go to St. Catherine and Clarendon. $3.2 billion will be spent in St. Mary and St. Anne each. St. Andrew, Hanover, St. James, Westmoreland, and Kingston will each benefit from between $2 and $2.9 billion in roadworks. $1.8 billion is allocated to Trelawney, $1.5 billion to St. Elizabeth, and just over $1 billion each to Manchester, St. Thomas, and Portland. Minister Warmington explains that 6 criteria will determine the roads that receive attention under the program.
1, the traffic volume, the level of traffic now using the corridor, and the expected growth in ensuing years. 2, road condition. 3, safety. So as reducing the accidents or increasing emergency response time will also form part of the decision-making process. Cost. The estimated cost of construction and maintenance will also be considered. The ease with which the road project can be implemented, social impact. Madam Speaker, this final criteria is important to all members of this House.
The SPARK program is expected to modernize more than 2,000 roads island-wide. Key objectives include improving the targeted road services and intersections, installing localized drainage, improving road safety through the construction of retaining walls and installation of guardrails, and installing pedestrian facilities at selected locations.
The road network is the backbone of our country, connecting businesses, industries, and individuals across the length and breadth of the country. This administration considered the intervention as an emergency within the context of road-related injuries and fatalities, as well as the deteriorating state of the public thoroughfare resulting from decade of underinvestment.
Special attention will be given to the Jamaica Fire Brigade this financial year as the government intends to continue addressing long-standing issues affecting the JFB. In his sectoral debate presentation on Tuesday, Local Government Minister Desmond McKenzie promised the recruitment and training of additional firefighters as well as the network expansion of fire stations. 2 new fire stations will be built, one in St. Elizabeth and the other in Clarendon, at a cost of $110 million.
The new fire station will be built in Balaclava in St. Elizabeth at a cost of over $20 million, Madam Speaker. A new fire station is to come on stream in Lionel Town in Clarendon, which will cost over $90 million, Madam Speaker. $70 million will be spent on upgrading the Anato Bay Fire Station. The York Park Fire Station, Madam Speaker, will get some benefit. But later on in the year, you will hear about what is going to be done to the York Park Fire Station.
In addition, $125.5 million is budgeted to recruit an additional 200 firefighters. This will include doubling the number of fire prevention officers from 70 to 140 across the island. The local government minister says firefighters will also get more personal protective equipment.
147 will be spent to give them more specialist equipment. 3 command vehicles will be procured at a cost of $22.5 million, Madam Speaker. Brand new fireboat to serve the town of Ocherius. We begin with a deposit of $109 million.
The Minister of Local Government and Community Development, Desmond McKenzie, is raising concerns about the current natural disaster threats facing the country and the impending hurricane season. Pointing to the triple threat of bushfires, drought, and road crashes, Minister McKenzie says the hurricane season, which begins today, will demand impeccable response nationally and from citizens.
Bushfire has been a major concern. What bushfires cost the country within the last 9 months is something that is frightening. The drought is another reason for concern. So when we put those 3 in the mix with what is purporting to be an active hurricane season, then it means our job to shape our response capabilities must be at a stage where at least we are able to provide service.
Minister McKenzie was speaking at a recent working session of the National Disaster Risk Management Council. And finally, Black River High School in St. Elizabeth will be taken off the shift system for the upcoming school year, which begins in September 2023. Minister of Education and Youth Fable Williams provided an update on the sector during this week's post-cabinet press briefing at Jamaica House.
And we continue to work so that we get all the schools, primary and high schools, that are on the shift program.
Meanwhile, she reports that $440 million has been allotted for vital school maintenance and infrastructure work this fiscal year. $244 million will be spent on electricity upgrades in 49 schools, as well as security fencing projects in 56 schools. And that's it for JIS News Today. I'm Stephen McHugh. Thanks for watching.
The 2023 Atlantic hurricane season starts today, and the experts are predicting less activities for the period. which ends on November 30. To share more is head of the weather branch at the Meteorological Service of Jamaica, Rohan Brown. Good morning, Mr. Brown. Thank you so much for joining us. Listen, the environmental factors are among the reasons for less active prediction. Elaborate a little bit more about that, and what's the general outlook for the season?
All right. First, let me start by saying less activity in terms of number of storms as compared to the past 5 years.
Yes.
So the activity for this year will be less in terms of the numbers over the past 5 years. However, the prediction is for a near normal, and a near normal season has about 14 named storms, of which 7 become hurricanes and 3 become major hurricanes. So in terms of that, we are going to be having a near normal season. But as we talk about environmental factors, there are 2 competing factors that will be dominant for this year. First, scientists around the world are predicting the onset and the development of El Nino during this summer. And simply put, it's a warming of the equatorial waters in the Pacific, and that warming has global circulation impacts. So for example, in the Caribbean here, we have strong wind shear activities, and those wind shear activities suppress tropical storm development. So the wind is going this way, then you have another wind going that way. You don't have the chance for the development of the systems. So you have shearing, and those limit the development of tropical cyclones across the Atlantic during El Nino periods. But on the other hand, we have above normal high ocean temperatures or sea surface temperatures at the surface, and also some depth below the water. And that heating of the water provides the energy that the storms need to develop. So you're going to be having those competing systems during the season, and that is why we have gone back down to near normal for this season as compared to the past 5 years where we would have had above normal seasons.
Well, does the less, having less rainfall, does it mean that how will that affect Jamaica? I mean, we're going through a period of drought now, and what does that really mean for us?
So with the onset of El Nino, you normally have less rain days. So the amount of rainfall, in fact, will lessen. However, the days that we do have rainfall, whether by a trough or a tropical wave or a tropical storm or hurricane, on those days, you're going to have stronger or rainfall that is greater in intensity and also longer duration. So even though you might have less rain days, but the days when you have rainfall, they're going to be heavy periods of rainfall, and those periods might be longer. And chances are the accumulation may be just as much as when you would have longer rain days.
So what about having less activities? Less active season, does it mean less rainfall as well?
So for the most part, yes, because you don't have the amount of systems developing to produce the significant rainfall that would occur.
Yeah, but we still can't put our guard down.
No, because this is the hurricane season. And between June and November, you have significant rainfall periods that are not even associated with tropical cyclones. So preparation and being prepared is what is required, especially during this time of the year.
Preparation is key. I mean, oftentimes we tell our citizens to be prepared, but them say hurricane not coming. I mean, that is a common, like a recurring decimal. I mean, but even so, what can you say to individuals who believe that we have less activities, less rainfall, it is okay to go about business as usual?
So, despite all the stats and that is out there, right? The significant number is always one, because all it takes is the passage of one tropical system across the island or near Jamaica to produce significant damage to property and infrastructure. Also, the loss of livelihoods, and more importantly, the loss of lives. And therefore, we always have to be prepared, especially during the hurricane season.
All right, we're going to have a little bit more conversation on this particular issue that is relevant and also important to this time since the start of the hurricane season, which goes until November 30. We're going to come right back. We're talking to Rohan Brown, and we'll be right back after this.
Finally reach the next part I show they cut it. Talking about that, listen to this. And sends a message. Disaster do happens. Be prepared. The municipal corporation reminds us of hurricane, earthquake, flooding, you name it, and prepare. Where's the emergency shelters? Samir.
Primary school, churches, community centers. Know your nearest emergency shelter. Protect your family during any natural disaster. Be prepared. Visit the ODPEM website at odpem.org.jm to find the shelter listing for your parish. Know your emergency shelters.
We are continuing our conversation with head of the weather branch of the Meteorological Service of Jamaica, Rohan Brown. Let's talk a little bit now about the names, the forecast names, and what does that mean if one forms out there, which is it going to be strong, is it going to be weak? Taking into consideration that we'd look at the environmental factors before, we look at whether an active season means more rainfall or a less active means less rainfall, and we look at the sea temperature. So let's talk about the names now.
All right. So the official forecast is for 12 to 17 named storms. So we have between 12 and 17 storms that could develop. And among that, we're having 5 to 9 that could become a hurricane. And furthermore, 1 to 3 that become a major hurricane, right? Category 3, 4, or 5. Now, with 17 named storms, anyone could develop in, near, or around Jamaica. And therefore, preparation is absolutely key.
And as you said, develop, it could be a major storm, or it could be not a major storm, or a major hurricane, not a major hurricane.
Exactly. So it could be just a tropical storm, or it could be a major hurricane. But because we're a small island state, anything that develops near or around Jamaica will have impacts on the island, whether it's going to be strong winds, whether it's going to be storm surges, whether it's going to be rainfall, whether it's going to be flooding, whether it's going to be landslides. Those impacts do occur. And sometimes, even last year, systems pass way south of Jamaica, but they would have produced rainfall events that would have provided flooding and landslides and would have caused damage to the island.
Yes. Talk to us about your preparedness as we go into this hurricane season, the kind of partnership that your office has created with various agencies, and what's in terms of disseminating the information, how is that going to be done?
Okay. So the Met Service, all the forecasters in the Meteorological Service, as it relates to hurricane, are trained at the National Hurricane Center.
Yes.
So all our meteorologists and forecasters are trained at the National Hurricane Center. And therefore, we have a partnership with the National Hurricane Center where they are responsible under a WMO mandate or agreement for hurricane activities in the region. So we have that dialogue with them. So whenever there's a storm, we have dialogue, even before you guys hear about it, with the hurricane forecasters at the National Hurricane Center. We together decide whether the system will pass near, over, and we decide whether there should be a warning or not. And this is normally done by the head of the service. He speaks with the Prime Minister, and then that information is disseminated to the National Hurricane Center, and they would do a general hurricane release for the region. But we do our hurricane bulletins based on internal assessments because we're local. We know the local topography, we know the wind regime, we know the air of Jamaica, and therefore we do create our own bulletins that talks about the impacts that will affect Jamaica in itself. We are prepared in terms of we have the forecasters, we have the capability, we have years of experience because we have forecasters with over 20 and 30 years of experience in terms of hurricanes, and we also have the equipment. In terms of dissemination, our information goes out as per usual via email. We're going to introduce some other steps this year, but I will allow the director to talk about that later on in the season.
And so this will determine how we perhaps alert Jamaicans and what to look for. We know the flood-prone areas as a result of the predictions being made, and how quickly we get people out of these areas.
And one of our partners, the ODPEM,
yes.
And therefore we know the risk maps, we know the locations that are more prone to disaster, and therefore we can target those messages for those particular areas. Also, we have done partnerships in terms of with other entities as well, like the Red Cross and other entities, so that information...
And the Jamaica Brigade as well.
Exactly, so that information can be disseminated quickly to individuals so that we can act, because it is the action. It doesn't care how good the forecast is, it is the actions of the individual. So easy to access information and easy to understand information so that persons can make the best possible decision to save lives and livelihoods.
Since the start of the hurricane season is June 1 and we're there now, I mean, how quickly will this information be disseminated to the nationals?
So whenever there is a system or the potential of a system, there is a operating system in the Met Service that is called the severe weather orders, that we switch mode in how we operate. And there are timelines, say 72, 48, 24 hours, timelines where different stakeholders will get different information. And based on that, so for example, the ODPEM might have information even before the general public knows about the system, because they are a critical stakeholder in terms of prepositioning equipment and supplies. So we have an operating system that allows us to act according to timelines in terms of the impact of a system on the island. So therefore, whether it's 84 hours, 72 hours, 48 hours, there are those guidelines that allows us to operate efficiently.
And monitoring the systems out there will determine how the bulletin is disseminated.
And we monitor 24 hours per day. So any time of the day somebody needs to call the Met Service, we're open. We're constantly watching the environment to see if there's development of anything.
Right. I know we've delved into this a little bit, but I want you to just hit it home for us, because oftentimes there are people who believe, again, that no storm not coming to Jamaica. We are a God-blessed country. But how important is it for us to be alert?
Listen to me. And I need to look at somebody. Again, all it takes is the passage of one system, just one system, over Jamaica, near Jamaica. And that one system, in terms of its impact, whether it is severe winds, whether it is storm surges, whether it is flooding, landslides, all that take is the passage of one system to create devastation to infrastructure, to property, loss of livelihoods, and also, more importantly, the loss of life. And therefore, we have to be prepared. We're in the age of technology. Your cell phone is there. Check your cell phone. If something is coming, be prepared and take the recommended action that is proposed by the authorities.
So that's useful information that we can always use, and thank you so much for being here with us today. Well, as I said, thanks so much to Mr. Ron Brown for sharing with us. It's all about the 2023 Atlantic hurricane season, this impact on Jamaica, and what will that look like for the Caribbean. On the other side of this break, a few tips to keep you safe this hurricane season. We'll be right back. Let's keep our guards up as we navigate this hurricane season with these reminders.
Every month of the year, there has been in our history some incidents of flooding that has taken place in some aspect of the country. And that is something that we have to take note of. Apart from monitoring and giving the forecast, we are also responsible for warnings. And so there are some warnings that we want you to take special heed to if you consider yourself to be vulnerable in any situation. When we speak about a flash flood watch, it means that there is a feature, some kind of weather system that is going to produce enough rainfall that makes it possible for you to get flooding. So it means start to watch, because the water levels are going to be increasing and there is the possibility of the flooding. Now, if we start to see that in some area flooding has started to occur, or if we believe that the flooding has been so close to an area that it is going to happen in that area in a short space of time, we will escalate that flash flood watch and refer to it as a flash flood warning. So when we talk about a flash flood warning, it means not only that the flooding is possible, but the flooding either has already started to happen or is going to happen in a very short space of time because it is very close to that area. So it is important to know what the watch means as opposed to what the warning means. Usually with the warning, we will not only issue a warning, but we will also tell you what kind of actions are important or what you should not do. Like, do not go through flooded waterways because it could pose a risk to your life and to your property. Also, if you live in low-lying or flood-prone areas, if it is an area that is regularly experiencing flooding, a flash flood warning for your area would mean that now is the time to move to higher ground because the flooding has already started or is going to happen very shortly. It is also important for us to know where we live, because sometimes in our messages we might not refer to the actual town, but we will tell you what part of the country the flood watch or the flood warning is relevant to. So if we talk about central parishes, we are referring to Clarendon. We're also talking about Manchester. We're also talking about St. Anne. These are central parishes. So you have to be knowledgeable of where you live so that you know whether the message actually applies to you. The messages that we issue for hurricanes and tropical storms are watches and warnings as well, like the flooding. But in this case, for a tropical storm or a hurricane, when we issue a watch, it means the conditions that are associated with the storm or the hurricane are possible within a certain time frame. If you hear tropical storm or hurricane watch, you could get the impact of that system within a day and a half, 36 hours. If we mention that it is a tropical storm or a hurricane warning, it means that you only have 1 day before that thing can affect you. So we are moving to how quickly you need to make sure that you are prepared by naming it a watch or a warning. So the watch is the first level of the alert that there is something that is likely to affect you. But when we move to a warning, it means now is the time to batten down because you most likely are going to experience that storm or hurricane. We might have a tropical wave, which is the least of them, in that it can still cause a lot of rain and it can still cause flooding and devastation, but it will not have very strong winds associated with it. But then there is the tropical depression that is a little stronger because now you have winds that are moving with it, gusty winds, and it also has a lot of rainfall. Then you have tropical storms, which is a more severe kind of tropical depression because the winds are even stronger. And then if it gets even stronger, it could become a hurricane. So it's important that you have your radio and that your radio is battery controlled, not dependent on electricity, so that you can hear the warning messages that come from the meteorological service. Also bear in mind that if you dial 116, you will be able to hear the latest message coming out of the meteorological service related to any warnings. We cannot stop paying attention. We cannot let down our guard. You have to prepare yourself and stay prepared until we are out of the threat.
We've come to the end of our show, but only for today. Do join us again tomorrow when we'll bring you another informative program. In the meantime, stay connected via our website, jis.gov.jm. And while you're online, send your feedback to Jamaica Magazine at jis.gov.jm or via tweet at JIS News. You may also find us on all the major social media platforms and through our mobile app that's Android and iOS compatible. On behalf of the entire production crew, I'm Adrian Atkinson. Do take care.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.